Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzz webinar with CubiCasa, your mobile floor plan tool. With us today, we have Eric. Sorry, I moved the tab. We have Eric Hackman, Director of Customer Success and Support of CubiCasa. Eric's a Customer Success and Support Director at CubiCasa, managing enterprise customer relationships and global customer support team. Before joining CubiCasa in February, Eric spent the previous 19 years in real estate valuation space with organizations such as Rels Valuation, CoreLogic, Clear Capital, and holding positions focused on quality assurance, panel relations, and client account management. We also have Genevieve Cline, business analyst from CubiCasa. Genevieve Cline is a business analyst for CubiCasa, and she's been working in the real estate and valuation world since 2019 with a background in managing customer quality and financial transactions. During that time, she found interest in real estate business and developed a passion for learning about the appraisal process with a focus on statistical analysis within the industry. Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you get started.
Great. Thank you. And thanks everybody for taking time out of your day to join us. We're really excited about the turnout and how many people have joined today to learn more about CubiCasa. And appreciate your time, and thank you, Appraisal Buzz, for having us. So looks like the poll just popped up. So just a quick overview, what we'll talk about today. We'll kick things off talking about our mission to get a floor plan on every listing, and then go into the details of what CubiCasa is and the benefits that it can provide you in your appraisal process, and show you some awesome examples of complex properties and really pushing the technology to the limits and seeing how it's performed, and then open it up for Q&A to answer some questions, some frequently asked questions that we hear from people in the industry, and then allow you guys to ask some questions we might not have covered throughout the deck. So first, we'll start off with a little bit about the consumer demand for floor plans. And NAR does an annual survey from home buyers and sellers. It's the Home Buyers and Sellers Survey. And consumers consistently rank floor plans as one of the most desired listing content after your standard photos and property data like bedroom, bathroom count, and square footage. And the importance of having a floor plan at the time of listing, I think it brings a lot of value to multiple different verticals within the real estate process. But it really helps give perspective for buyers, agents, appraisers, clear idea. Well, really anyone involved in the real estate transaction, a clear idea as to how the property flows. But most importantly, before they arrive to the property. So, and throughout this process in my time at CubiCasa, I'm spoken with a number of different appraisers that have said, like, having that floor plan data on the property that they're going to go and appraise before they arrive, not only helps them understand the utility of the property, but also adds a huge value when researching comparables. So I think there's a lot of value for what we're trying to accomplish for appraisers, but then there's some obvious for the buyers, right? So, being better informed about their purchasing decisions, when they can review just a single image and understand like how big the rooms are. Like, will my wraparound couch fit in the living room? Will my king size bed fit in the bedroom? And, does the layout of the property like really work for my family and what I'm looking for in a purchase? And then you've got sellers and agents, and I think this also really helps for the appraisers as well, but, helps agents understand the true measurements and the size of a home so they can be better prepared to market the property and, know what to expect from the inspections and the appraisal process. Where typically in the past, I think there's been a lot of reliance on public records, which we all know can, be inconsistent and unreliable. So, and I know everybody's had conversations before on GLA disputes and square footage disputes. I think it can really help prepare everybody involved in the transaction. But going to the next slide, we kind of wanted to talk about the problem, the floor plan problem per se in the U.S. And we know we have this massive demand, but it's really on less than 10% of all real estate listings in the U.S. today. But because of these unique ways that floor plans, create like a smoother and more effective real estate ecosystem, they've become ubiquitous in other countries around the world. So countries like Australia that has a robust real estate data data demand, Finland, Australia, Norway, Sweden, England, really most of Europe, um, are just some examples of markets where floor plans are essentially standard practice and expected by consumers on real estate listings. And typically, if and when they're not available, there's a story behind that. There's likely something wrong with the property. So our mission at CubiCasa is to help solve for this floor plan problem. And what we're doing, as far as bringing this solution, which is a simple to use, affordable mobile technology that anyone can capture the interior space of a property, and we can produce a highly detailed, accurate, and reliable floor plan. And what we're doing to bring that to the forefront of the industry, and we'll have a number of announcements that come out over the next few weeks, are partnering with MLSs across the nation and help making this more visible and easily consumable by their members, and gone as far as even offering a free marketing floor plan that anybody can use to inside of the US. So we will talk about what is CubiCasa, if you want to go to the next slide. And we are as a scalable solution, an easy way to capture a floor plan. And we do this with a downloadable mobile application and a simple 5-minute scan of the interior property from a smartphone. No additional hardware is needed, like an expensive HD camera or a tripod or any kind of manual measuring tools. It's just a cell phone that you already have in your pocket on site with you at the inspection. And we're scalable in a way that we're supported on both Apple and Android devices, which other players in this space are not. It's just an easy download of our application in the Google or Apple store, and a quick scan of the interior of the property. And any untrained user can easily capture the space. The application's great about letting you know if you're doing something wrong, walking you through the process, and with its warnings, and letting you know if you need to change your approach. But super easy to use. Any untrained user will have success with it. But for those that are planners and want to be prepared, we have a ton of great content and easily digestible videos on best practices and how-tos that are searchable on YouTube. We have a ton of content on our website, and it's really, really easy to follow, short digestible videos, but it's any untrained user can use the technology. But we know there's other technologies in the space, but I can tell you that none are going to be as easy to use and as accessible as ours, being available on both the Apple and Android platforms. And we did that to really be a forerunner in this space. We know there's other technologies out in the market as well, but we're confident in the accuracy that our technology provides. We've done over 1 million scans. We've been battle tested since 2015. And the industry is starting to recognize that as well. I mean, Fannie Mae even went as far as recognizing, the emergence of mobile technologies that, measure homes, generate floor plans, calculate GLA in their July announcement on the standardization of property measurements. So we're excited to see them acknowledge that. We are partners with both Fannie and Freddie in the desktop space as this being a reliable technology that's consistent and aligns with the ANSI standards for measuring. And I'm going to let my partner here actually talk about some of those consistencies and the problems that we want to solve with our mobile technology. So Genevieve, hand it off to you.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, especially in the appraisal space, we know that accuracy is a really big deal, right? A lot rides on getting our GLA accurate, on understanding the property flow. So a big part of what we want to help do with CubiCasa is, one, we're ANSI aligned and use consistent methodology because it's a technology solution, right? So there might still be regional practices that you have to work around, but overall, you're going to have a more consistent output than maybe an appraiser from, say, California versus Florida, just because of the area differences in how measurement is done. The other thing is scalability. when we've seen a lot of floor plan solutions in the market that have been tested, many of them aren't very user-friendly. They're not easy to use. It's not really that helpful to anyone, especially an appraiser who's very trained at measuring, to go out to a property and then have a very complex, time-involved process that they have to perform instead of doing their standard measurements. So we try to make sure it's really accessible and easy. Another thing is, especially talking about hybrids and desktops, it lets an interested party have the potential to collect data without risk because they can't manipulate the floor plan. So that's not really an option we've had. You can't have a real estate agent provide you measurements and feel very confident about that, right? Most of the time, because they could be interested in the transaction. So it's a good option for that. It could also help, something we've heard from some appraisers, a lot of them like to have the technical solution because it can kind of remove them and improve objectivity in the sketch process for a similar reason. And then fidelity, there's a lot of really good data that we can capture. It shows the doors, it shows interior walls, a bunch of other data points. So it really provides a nice look that some appraisers have indicated, makes them feel just a little more secure in the appraisal output. But we have done a lot of testing on our GLA. So we usually test against traditional appraisals because that's what we consider the best way to know if we're really performing. Property records online, public data, MLS. We use that too, but with less of the importance added onto it, less weight, an appraiser might say. Just because we know that, an appraiser is going to be a professional. Property record data is subject to aging, all kinds of issues like that, and we can dive in a lot further. One of the specific cases that you can see here that we've done is try comparing how two appraisers that go to the same property perform versus two people with CubiCasa scanning the same property. And we see pretty similar average performance, both of them running close to 4%, 3.9 for two appraisers, 4.0 for CubiCasa, just showing that both tend to be very consistent. We see fewer deviations with CubiCasa, probably due to measuring technique and just the fact that it is technology driven. Also smaller sample size, so that could account for it too, to a point. But it's a way to try and help show that, it's not something we anticipate being an issue accuracy-wise for appraisers. A lot of the times, it's one of the biggest hangups we hear when an appraiser is starting to use it is validating accuracy. Just making sure that you're providing a truly good product. We have a lot of appraisers who will use CubiCasa and still sketch when they first try it out so that they can compare it. And most of the time, we've heard very positive results where they end up switching to CubiCasa completely. Obviously, though, that can be up to personal choice. But the other thing is we understand that what appraisers need differs very much from what a real estate agent might need, right? You need to have exterior dimensions. You need to have GLA specific, not just total area or GIA. You need to be able to show the area calculations. So those are some of the things we have on the floor plan. But we also have some other traits, like the labels of the room are automated, that you can change them. It indicates if an area is basement or not. That way you can separate out, say, your finished basement area from your unfinished, as well as from your actual above grade GLA, since that's a different impact in the appraisal space. There's also some additional features that can be pretty nice, like interior walls, doorways, staircases are shown. Into exterior ingress and egress, especially in cases if you've got like a weird ADU or, a non-contiguous area that's not technically GLA because of how it connects to the home, stuff like that. Functional obsolescence can be shown for the most part, depending on the type, obviously, but if a room's accessed through another room or exceedingly small. Yeah, and then we also have the PDF that you can export directly into your appraisal software with some editing capabilities for things like if a room's not heated, you'll be able to adjust that when you're in our editing tool, since there are some things that can't just be automated, right? That's why having an appraiser looking at a report and sketch is so important. And then we did just recently announce our ADU capabilities. So we have automatic detection of ADUs based on Fannie Mae's guidelines, but with editing capabilities. So if you have different guidelines for your state or need to show it differently, like maybe you're looking at a ADU that has a kitchenette, not a kitchen, sort of thing, like that's not per Fannie's rules, but if you needed to change it for some reason for a different lender, you could do that. And it has its own distinct color. Like you can see here, it's in this like indigo. And all areas on our GLA sketches are separated out by the type of area by color. So an ADU will be indigo, GLA would be green, non-living unfinished area would be in red, like a garage or a porch. And then finished basement would be in yellow. So all of that is separated out for you to see. And you can also notice that the spaces in the area calculations are also separated out following that same guideline. And then we want to talk a little bit about kind of how we get to this, and I'll let Eric take off on that.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So this is just giving you kind of a high level overview of what the process is. So you start with the scan from your mobile device around the interior of the property. And what that scan data is doing is capturing that video, which is then delivered to CubiCasa and run through our computer vision software and our AI engines. Essentially, a point cloud file is built off of the data that's captured and run through those softwares to determine, based on the fixtures in any given room, what that room is, and then totaling up those room counts and essentially running that file through our algorithms to render the 2D floor plan with GLA measurements. So this is a very high level view of kind of what the whole process is in a nutshell. But we're going to go into the details of the capture process, show you a little bit of a video on really how easy this is for you as the user and what you're doing at the property in order to send back that file to us. So I believe we're going to show a video here.
Yeah, so we're going to start with this little GIF that just kind of shows how someone scans a house. Basically, all you would do, you'd open the application. From the application, you would choose to scan a new property. You would put your phone into a horizontal position at this point in time, put it at about chest height, and then aim it just a little bit down so that we can see the floor enough to get good context. And then you would walk parallel to the wall, following the perimeter of the home, making sure things like closets are opened, lights are on, stuff like that, just to help make sure we're capturing all of the data. And so we're going to go ahead and switch over to a video. Perfect. Thank you, Virgil. That will kind of show from the actual interior of the scan, or what the scan's showing would be more accurate, so that you can kind of get an idea of like what we're doing as we're scanning from the camera's perspective. So like right here, it's a very small closet. You don't even need to go in. You just want to show it so that we kind of get the dimensions and back out so that it's not being blinded. An important thing to consider is that, you know, the camera is capturing dimensions the whole time it's moving around like this. So it's already capturing all this information, but you want to avoid getting too close or like opening a door in the way or turning so that you're facing really close to a wall, just because it kind of blinds it. Like if you were imagining trying to sketch a house this way and you just got too close and kind of lost where you were, it's pretty good at accounting for that. But, you know, the better you are with that, the better the end accuracy, right? Similar to anything else in the appraisal space.
And the app's really good about warning you to some of those effects that Genevieve just talked about. If you're moving too fast or if you're too close, it will tell you. I mean, and I know there's been a couple of questions that popped up in regards to like either clutter and I mean, fully furnished homes, it doesn't have to be an empty home by any means, right? The majority of the properties that we scan are fully furnished, have clutter. Nothing about that changes what you're going to do during the scan process. And again, it will warn you if you are doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's a good call out, Eric. I would also note, like, the main thing if you're scanning a really cluttered area is to remember to still stay back from the clutter, because the scan can kind of tell what are permanent objects versus non-permanent, like the wall. But if you're so close to the clutter that it can't see the wall at all, it might have a harder time accounting for that area. But like I myself scanned my mother-in-law's home, and her garage, like half full. It's a 450 square foot garage, literally half full of stuff to the point where I couldn't go to the other side. I was like, man, I don't know. We're pretty good, but I don't know if we'll be able to do it. And we not only did the scan come out with the garage intact, it accounted for like the weird angles in the garage where it bumped in, stuff like that. So we can handle a pretty high level of clutter. We do use it on, refinances and stuff like that today. And we don't really come across many issues, especially if you're using like a phone with LiDAR, which is even better at capturing that kind of information.
Joel, you asked a question. Right now, you're seeing the scanning in landscape mode. That's the current way we do capture the data. We are working on potentially moving to portrait mode, just because we realize that it just captures more information. So that's future state, but good question.
Yeah. And something this is an appraiser focus here. Something I would note is, as an expert in the field, if there's something that you would care about when you were sketching a property, like low ceilings, making sure you're capturing that area is going to be important, right? So we do recommend with like a sloped ceiling to pause, pan up, pan back down, and then resume, just to make sure we're getting the full vertical height, because we are capturing vertical dimensions as we go, but they might not be as, like if we're looking at like above 5 feet or something, it might not be captured unless you pan up. Or like a closet. I've seen a case where we had a dormer window where the sides were sloped into a closet, but because the closets were not scanned, we couldn't tell that there was slope in the closet. Stuff like that. If it's something where you would there's like an outlying behavior, you would want to capture it using your expert knowledge in the field.
And Dan, you asked about panning up. I think Genevieve just talked about that. So we would ask that you do pan up and capture windows, because we will include those in our floor plan. Same goes for fixed furniture and appliances, because we will recognize and include that in the rendering.
I do want to note we have an add-on for fixed furniture, so you might not want to pay a little extra for your fixed furniture. Some appraisers do, just because they like the improvement in quality, but the standard GLA output does not include fixed furnitures, but it will show like doorways, stuff like that still. And I'm going to go ahead and switch back to our actual presentation here.
And there was another question about hoarder homes. Now, Genevieve kind of touched on it. If you can't see any of the floor, or if it's ceiling to floor clutter, or you can't even identify a wall in a space, it likely will have some issues tracking that. If it's, about yay high, if you're able to capture any of the floorboard, or panning up more and capturing the wall space, you would have success with the scan.
I would recommend, most cluttered homes that we've seen, it can handle. There are very few instances where it's been to the extent that we can't perform at all. It's pretty good at detecting that. Most people still have to live in the house to some degree, even if not that much. So usually there's enough room for us to be able to work with it, especially if you have one of those phones with like LiDAR. That does help a lot.
And there was just a question that popped up, Genevieve, asking what LiDAR is. And this, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great question. So LiDAR is a technology basically that's like a, how would you put it, a photo detection technology. So if you think of like cars, like Tesla cars and stuff that have automated tech to stop before they hit something, it tests distance, and it's used in some of that kind of stuff too. So when you're scanning, some phones have LiDAR, which is a specific type of like the scanning technology that's just really high quality. It's like the highest in the market right now. All like modern phones have some level of like dimensional tooling in them, I guess is the way I would describe it. But LiDAR is like a really high quality one that some phones have and is used in other spaces.
And it's as far as performance goes, it will give you the most accurate results just because it is such a reliable and accurate form of measurement. Like Genevieve said, I mean, this is what's in self-driving cars to keep it pace. And you're going to find that on the 12 Pro, 13 Pro, and iPhone 14s. We've yet to see it in Android, and I think a lot of that has to do with there's just so many manufacturers of Android capable phones versus Apple, really streamlining it. And, generation to generation, Apple phones tend to improve more on the camera and the technology inside of the camera, which is why we're seeing it in the 12, 13, and 14 Pro versions.
We're going to get into some complex property examples just to kind of show some of the cases where we see appraisers get the most value. So I'll let Eric start us off on these.
Yeah, and some really awesome stories. I mean, I feel like we get our best stories from appraisers out in the market that are scanning complex homes. So, I mean, not only are we a simple solution that will save you time on site and uploading sketching to your appraisal reports, but we are really good at complex properties. I mean, we've pushed the boundaries of what our technology can do, and you can even see from this scan here, it's recognizing the stamped concrete around the pool area, and the accessory dwelling. so I had just wanted to share a cool story with you. I had an appraiser approach me at the NAR conference a few weeks ago and tell me about an inspection he went out to do, pulled up, and the property was a geodesic dome home. And I know everybody's had one of those scenarios where you pull up and immediately regret that sinking feeling and immediately regret accepting the assignments or realize you didn't quote a high enough fee. But, he had heard about CubiCasa on a podcast he said he was listening to, weeks prior, and quickly downloaded the app while he was sitting in the driveway of the property, completed the scan, and the results ended up coming in like 20 square feet difference from what public records has. So was absolutely blown away with what it was capable of doing. He said the amount of time alone, he probably saved himself an hour on site, even though it was only around a 1,900 square foot property. But leaving you with that level of confidence that it can perform and can perform on really challenging properties. You can go to the next slide and see another example. This was an appraiser buddy of mine who's probably the most skeptical person I know as far as how the technology was going to perform and the accuracy. He's up in the Evergreen, Colorado area, pulled up to a property, around 10,000 square feet, curved walls, and just had that sinking feeling about how long this was going to take him to hand measure. And then really like the confidence in his own sketching and results. And was just blown away with the performance. I know it's a little hard to see here, but you can see the breakdowns of all those measurements from the exterior angles on a property that likely would have taken him 2 hours alone to measure. So we love complex. I think you'll love complex when you realize the time save and the accuracy and just the level of detail and the output. Like how long would it take to put all of that detail into a report? But I mean, a 10,000 square foot property took him less than 15 minutes to capture. And the average capture time for properties from 2,000 to 5,000 square feet is about 5 minutes. I said, your first couple of times scanning, you're probably going to be a little more cautious and slower in the capture, just until you really understand and feel comfortable with the technology. But after that, you realize that even with a quicker step in your pace, that it's still performing the same way. So
I saw Paul asked about spiral staircases. This one's a really good example. There is a second floor. We just don't have the sketch on here for visual purposes. But like open to below and spirals, like it's really not a problem because of how the technology works. It's basically like mapping the home out on a grid. So in general, like something like a staircase that's a spiral is a lot easier for technology to handle than for like us. I would not want to be the person sketching a spiral staircase for sure.
There's a couple of questions that we could quickly answer. one was how long does it take to receive the file after the sketch is completed? So when you submit the scan to us, our standard SLA delivery is 24 hours. We are hitting that with almost 100% confidence. So
Like
that is the
99.9.
it's almost 100%, and likely it's going to be under 24 hours. We do have, and that's the standard with the cost of the GLA scan. The GLA scan is $15. But we do have a rush option. It's a 6-hour rush option. It's an additional $10. But you have that available.
I see just a really interesting question from Steve about using it for other floor plan uses. We do have like engineers and stuff who use our tech for their needs for like checking general wall locations, stuff like that on the interior. So I don't see why it couldn't be an option. I do want to go through this last example so we can officially move on to Q&A though.
Yeah.
So one of the other benefits we've seen for appraisers in particular is stuff like functional obsolescence or anything where you might want to include interior walls. I think every single appraiser I've ever talked to who's been asked about interior walls hates to do them, partially just because if you want to do all of them, it's very complicated, even if you don't have to have them accurate to the dimensions, because every single one I've spoken to wants to be accurate to the dimensions, right? Like you don't necessarily want to have just a vague wall in there to kind of show something. You want it to be accurate. So this is like a really great example we've seen of a bedroom that you can see on the top right of the second floor on the right image, where you access it through a bedroom and a closet. So stuff like that's really weird. Just these weird rooms that you don't know what to do with. A really small room, I could see if you're an appraiser that goes out to a property, you go to sketch out your house, later you go home to put it into your actual tool, and now you're like, man, was this the property with the small room? I don't know. I could see things like that just being a little easier to manage, time saving wise. But so that's another potential benefit that you could see.
Awesome. There's some really good questions that are popping up here, and I want to try to cover as much of them as possible. So I'll quickly go through this last slide on the why. Right. I think you can feel, or you can trust the. There's been a lot of research and time invested into this. We're very confident in the level of accuracy we have, and like you see on this figure here, we've completed over 1 million floor plans, and we're being utilized all across the world right now. But it's just such a simple technology to use, and a scalable solution at that, being available on both Apple and Android devices. So there's that. There's the consistency that Genevieve talked about, and the efficiency. I mean, we had a dedicated appraiser firm of about 130 real estate appraisers utilizing CubiCasa on all of their assignments. And like, I think the biggest takeaway from not only just getting the professional detailed output, but their average time on site was almost cut in half based on incorporating this tool as just a part of their everyday inspection process. And with that is time saves, and with the time save is additional capacity that you have to do more work. So I don't want to lose sight of the efficiencies that can be gained from this. And we talked about the professional output, the level of detail. You saw some of those examples, but we also a cool feature as part of this tool is we offer it as a white labeled solution. So you have the ability to put your name or company logo on the output, and that's at no additional cost. That's just included in the deliverables. And then, really making this an easily consumable, affordable option for you. We have, in the past few months, have reduced our pricing, where our GLA floor plan and our marketing floor plan, for example, are $15, and it's per use. There's no subscription commitments. There's no monthly subscriptions required, but it's on a per use basis at a $15 price point. And most recently have released volume-based discounting at an achievable number, right? If you do more than 20 in any given month, we'll knock off 25% of your total monthly invoice. And that, gets a little more aggressive with the volume-based discounting. the higher volumes that you do, the larger the discount that you get. So couldn't have made it any more affordable and easier to obtain with some incentives for volume. So cool.
So, and we're getting into Q&A now, and I see quite a few questions that I think I could answer en masse, kind of, if you're all right with me starting it off, just
Please.
answering quite a few. We've got a lot of technical questions, so I see quite a few questions about like exterior features like porches, patios, sunrooms. Basically, if you scan it, it will show up. Some things are going to be better than others. Like a carport depends on what exactly there is to indicate the end of a carport, right? Like if it's a covered carport that just doesn't have like a front door, you could probably capture that and get it all right. But if it's like barely a structure, QB will have a hard time with that. But if for the most part, like a patio, a deck, a sunroom, anything like that can be captured. And if, say, you have like a sunroom versus an enclosed porch where the line can be very blurry between whether or not it should be included in the GLA, we'll do our best to automate it, but then you can go in and change that later. I noticed also a lot of people had questions about like opening doors. The reason you don't want to open a door in front of the camera specifically is because it's capturing that dimension. So to it, it's kind of like a wall moving. It's one of the biggest things that you could do to accidentally cause like a dimensional error in the scan. You can, if you absolutely need to open a door while you're scanning, that's not a problem. Just point the camera away from the door to open it so it's not seeing that movement and getting confused because it thinks you're moving, basically. And we have a lot of like long-term plans and things we're considering to do. Things like, we hear a lot of specific issues that appraisers have, different options for downloads. There are some that exist other than the PDF, like SVG, PNG, and JPEG, I think are current options that we have outside of the PDF, but we could potentially look into more. I'll have to look into the DWG file someone mentioned, Joe. But we do want to do things like we hear a lot about pause functionality. That's something we've considered. It's just really hard to do in practice because it's, tracking, it's grabbing dimensions all the time. So if you grab dimensions, move, and then try to connect them, it causes more issues. So it's a difficult problem to solve without removing quality. We also have, we hear a lot that people want to be able to take photos while they're going through. That's something we'd like to do that's not in progress yet, but it's in mind as a future potential option. So a lot of things like that are in progress or being considered, but feel free to, throw them out at any time and we'll take a look and see what we can do.
Well, and to Genevieve's point, into the questions around the patios and the accessory dwellings and the garages, we encourage you to do everything in one scan, right? So even if that requires you to walk outside to an accessory dwelling, I mean, you saw what capture took place on the example that I showed you on the complex properties. As they were walking out to the accessory dwelling, it captured all of the pool area, the stamp patio and the pool space. So do everything in one scan. And there was another question about where you start and stop. If you're in a market that has basements, I suggest starting in the basement, capture that space and work up floor to floor. Even as you're walking up the stairs, capture all of that, because we're going to draw all of that and include that into the calculations. But and then and if you in a market doesn't have a basement, you just use the front door as a starting point, right? Capture everything on that floor, then move up. But that's the best way to do it. Not stopping the video and restarting, because we want all of that captured in a single data file. So do everything at once, even if it makes the video longer. And there were other questions about size, the memory and the size on your device. When you submit it to CubiCasa after the scan, it's gonna purge that from your phone. We'll have it on file ourselves. But it's cellular service is not required. Quite honestly, I put mine in airplane mode because I don't like
suggestion.
Yeah, I don't like the pop-ups that my phone provides on all the applications that I have, or the weather updates, or I don't want to take an inbound call so that it doesn't disturb me while I'm capturing the scan. So I personally put it into airplane mode when I do my capture. So no cell service required. If you want to submit it to us while you're on site, turn it on after the capture, but it's not required.
Yeah, to what Eric was saying, we would actually recommend being in airplane mode just because sometimes like getting a call could kick you out of the scan and then you have to restart, and no one wants that. You don't need any kind of cell or Wi-Fi service while you're doing the scan. It's only during the upload process. And I know a lot of people had some other questions. Like there's a really good one about dark areas and Androids. So Androids have a unique issue where you can't have your camera on and your flashlight on at the same time with an Android. It can only allow like one photo thing at a time. So like if you're using the CubiCasa app and you have an iPhone and you go into a dark space, it automatically turns on the flashlight actually. But with the Android, we would probably recommend you bring a flashlight just in case, because it cannot have the flashlight on at this point. Yeah, just a downside of the Android. And someone else asked about backtracking. We don't recommend backtracking, but you totally can. It's not going to break the scan if you backtrack. We'll just see people go into like the same room like 10 times, and that doesn't really help. It could do more to confuse because you're getting the dimensions from all these different areas. But it should be okay. Like if you need to go through a room twice, not a big deal. Totally all right.
And I saw something pop up about there being a time limit. That we don't have time limits on our scan, so that must be with whatever I don't know if that's Groundworks or whomever. We don't have a time limit on ours. I scanned a 140,000 square foot convention center in St. Cloud, Minnesota, just trying to push our technology to the brink. It still worked, and beautifully actually. We don't have a time limit, so that wasn't our technology. And like I said, if you're going to go slower the first few times you use it, so you don't need to worry about a timeout. The only thing that could happen is if you've got multiple apps running in the background and you're scanning a really large property, you'll feel your device starting to warm up. This is pretty rare occurrence, but I'd say that's the only thing that would happen. And we actually have a safe mode within the settings that you can turn on that it will it'll stop it from doing that. So
we have a couple questions too about like how to scan whether we're scanning the interior and exterior. You only need to scan the interior. If you want to show like a porch or a patio, something exterior, you're going to another structure on the property, then you'll want to scan through the interior. Like you can walk through a pathway outdoors and it's not going to hurt the scan at all. So if you walk from like the main house to the shed, that's totally okay. We don't scan the exterior because it has a lot more issues and how it forms and it doesn't have all the data. That's why we don't have like an exterior scan option where you scan the outside of the house for the dimensions. There's a lot that goes into that, like light impact, just the amount of context that the application has for tracking what it's measuring, just a lot of stuff like that goes into it. So at this point, we don't do any no exterior dimensions are required, or measurement scanning is required.
There's a lot of device specific questions that are popping up. We have a laundry list of supportable devices on our website. But if you think back in like iPhone generations, 8 and newer, which 8 is, my goodness, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years back. But 8 and newer for Apple. And there was a question about iPad. There's a list of the supportable iPad devices on there as well. But the list for Android, it's enormous. It's most of the Android devices that we support, but all of those are listed on our website. And someone had a question about pricing. As I mentioned, the GLA floor, and this is all price per use, no subscriptions. The GLA floor plan is $15, or we have the marketing floor plan, which is more of a customizable real estate listing style floor plan. That's $15. And then we do have the free option that I mentioned. It's a very basic marketing floor plan, black and white floor plan. No GLA data, but that's free. Anyone can use that. So I want to put a reminder out there that everyone, for just on signing up on our through our mobile application, everyone gets a free scan outside of the free marketing floor plan that we offer inside the US. everybody gets a free scan. So that whether that's the GLA floor plan or the customizable marketing floor plan, everyone gets the first one free. And then those are our price options for the per use beyond that.
I'm seeing a lot of questions, which I'm not surprised by, about how exterior walls are done. So right now we add in a standard thickness just on all homes, which is also why we wouldn't recommend our scan necessarily for condos or for multifamily right now. It's not built for multifamily in particular. Like, you could do it, you just wouldn't necessarily get the breakdowns in the way that you would do it as an appraiser. For condos, that we have some workarounds you can use, but we are in the process right now of adding some ways to help with wall thickness so that it's more manageable for different property types and things like that, and has a bit more maneuverability, because we understand that not all homes have the same wall thickness, but that's in progress to be further handled.
And I know there's some questions about the ANSI standards requiring exterior dimensions, but that's how we recognize that without having to do a scan from the exterior, is the inclusion of the wall thickness. And, like I said, the GSEs acknowledge this as an acceptable source for the floor plan and GLA capture. So they've recognized that as well. And GLA, I know people have asked questions about that. I had responded to a couple of them, but it's gross living area.
I see someone, Dave, it looks like, asking about GSEs and lenders allowing you to use this. I mean, it's hard to say like every lender would allow you to use it, because every lender is kind of unique. But we have, like Eric mentioned earlier, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are definitely aware of our and other floor plan tool usage. And we do have lenders that use us. I actually just bought a house this year, and a customer that I didn't think would have our floor plan ended up using it and having it in my appraisal on a manufactured home. So like, we have like AMCs that use us, appraisal management companies. We have independent appraisers who use us. So it is used in the market. There are lenders that take it. I mean, I can't say for sure that if you're working with a specific lender that they're guaranteed to be totally kosher with it, but this isn't like some crazy thing. I wouldn't see you having issues on most property types. Like I said, multifamily might be a little different, or commercial could be more complicated because there's different rules that I'm not as familiar with. But like on a traditional appraisal or something normal, I wouldn't see a problem with most lenders.
And there's a question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I see a few questions about edits. So we have an editing tool that allows you to do quite a bit. One of the main things that comes up with appraisers is we don't allow dimensional edits. It's not so much an issue of like whether or not you should be allowed to do it necessarily, as it is how we function. Like, essentially the house is being plotted on like a graph. It's being built with that point cloud. So you can't really just change like one wall easily. So it's really complicated. There's also like a level of data integrity. If we allow edits, then we have to consider how to do it only for appraisers and not for real estate agents. If like you did want to have a real estate agent do it for a hybrid or something like that. So it's a like data integrity issue and a functional issue as well of how the technology itself works. But you can change things like if an area is included in GLA or not, as well as like if it's basement or something like that for your own area. There's quite a few changes you can make. We have a lot of articles if you're curious on our site.
And one more point that I know I saw a couple of pop-ups around this, but we encourage you to use and resell our deliverable. This is a great alternative revenue stream for appraisers as well. And I don't know if in your market, you're typically engaged from real estate agents or homeowners to sketch the property, but you please use this, resell it. A lot of folks in the real estate photography community do the same. There's no reason appraisers can't use this as another alternative revenue stream. But I know we're getting close to time here. We have a help@CubiCasa.com email box that my team supports and manages. It's monitored 24 hours a day through the business week and 9 to 4 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. So we are always available. We encourage your questions, We encourage you to try this out and be skeptical of it, but I think you'll be really blown away with the results and the professional output and how simple this is. And there's no reason not to try it when everyone gets a free scan. So please do. And we would love your feedback.
Yeah, and we do have a lot of like help support content on our site. So there's a lot of questions that I know we didn't get to that you might be able to get an answer without even reaching out. But please feel free to reach out if that's your preference.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Eric and Genevieve. That was awesome. And I know, like you said, Genevieve, we probably had over 500 questions. So there was a lot to sift through, and we appreciate the interest in this. And you can reach out to help at CubiCasa if you have more questions. This is being recorded, so we'll be sending out the recording. We have a pop-up offer coming up on your screen as well that you can try out that scanning for free of your home and just try it out. And then maybe once you try that out, you'll have more questions available for them. So we really appreciate everyone joining us. We thank you, CubiCasa, for helping us put this on. And let us know if you need anything else, and have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.